faster in this Ultima than the drivers in that movie. Mostly because those drivers are just actors. But let's get back to the Ultima. Cool, your legislature called you a national champion. I don't think that's Blue light means time to get out. If you can follow a green light and a blue light, you can do this. You don't need to know anything about the stock market. The software is doing the work, and the software is extremely accurate.
Anywhere else. Their customers, including myself, report that the Accurate treatment is remarkably quick, completely.
Maybe it seems so complicated. Is it over now? Or did you just say it? Should it come now? 'Cause I want you to be all over me. Just for me.
Alright, so you can see we finally got the 1091 playing on AM, which is kind of nice. Unfortunately, there's a lot of interference around here, and I'm pretty sure all the electronics in my room are not helping. But only a few feet of antenna, we're doing pretty good. It's also giving me a chance to play around with the lighting. It's got a neat lighting system, so you get foreign, broadcast, and then police again. It just flips that. Anyway, I got the tuning condenser dunked and cleaned, got all the rust off of it. I did find a short in the oscillator section. One of the plates was bent slightly, so I straightened that out. I haven't done an alignment on this yet. I want to wait to do that because I'm going to clean the IF cans. I'm going to pull those. And I also need to sleeve a whole bunch of the wiring coming out of them because the insulation is coming off pretty badly. And it's coming through a hole that has no protection with a grommet. And if any one of those touches the chassis, it goes straight to B-, and that's no good. That'll cause some trouble. In the meantime, I wired everything back in, and I even got a full set of new rubber bushings for the tuning condenser from my local hardware store. And miraculously, they were the exact parts I needed. I didn't have to use like some sink washers or something. I actually found stepped washers, identical in dimensions and everything to the ones that originally used, got them in there, and they work great. Actually, we can take a look at that here. Yeah, it's a bit hard to see, but there's one above and one below. There's a 1/4-inch diameter steel insert that goes in there, and then there's also the one rubber grommet at the back that slips over a pin and then is held in a hole there. Overall, this came out really good looking. At least I think so. I haven't replaced the wiring coming off of it. I've got some new stuff. I wish I knew the original colors. All I have is yellow right now, and I'm pretty sure these IF can ones back here were not yellow. And then there's the wire coming out of the 6J7 right there. Might leave that alone, but got a lot more things cleaned up. And I also replaced both of the dial lamps. These are number 47 bulbs, however the originals were incandescent. These are actually LED. I got them from a local company at a ham fair, and they are actually really, really nice. Quite a bit brighter than the originals. The only downside, and I don't know if it's quite obvious if we look at the... Yeah, so you see how there's this shadow here in the center? The problem with these LED ones is that they, in a standard incandescent bulb, the filament is directly in the center of the glass enclosure, and there's no reflector or anything, but light comes out evenly from every direction, front and all the sides. With these LED ones, they actually have a PCB that is cruciform shaped. It's just a cross sectioned right in the middle, and then there's LEDs on every side of that. But they only come out the sides. They don't point straight forward. So you wind up with this shadow. With what light does come forward is still pretty good. So I think these would work fantastic. I bought like 10 of them. They'll work great for edge-lit displays, but for ones where they require light going out into the center, I'm actually getting a little bit of loss around the edge here. Most of it's going that way. I did notice that even with the original incandescent, these tags don't fully illuminate. You get a little bit of a shadow at the top, but it is enough to completely illuminate the actual call letters. Better than nothing. I still got to repaint the insides of those white so that I get good enough reflection. But yeah. So far, so good. The volume control, though, I'm having a bit of an issue with that. I have cleaned it, but pressing down or anywhere up does actually seem to improve the actual connection. I'm probably going to have to take it out and fiddle with it, or I could just leave it alone, because it does still work. But anyway, I do want to talk about how I actually got the thing playing on AM, because the problem was actually my fault entirely. Well, during the time that I was replacing the capacitors underneath, there were a number of them on the band switch. And I was attempting to desolder one of the terminals, and I got a little overzealous with it, and the wax started to melt on it, and I accidentally dragged it down the side of the coil itself, and I went right through the secondary winding unknowingly and split it. So the oscillator coil for the broadcast section was toast. And I didn't realize that after I went back, grabbed the heat gun, melted all the wax off of it, and took a look, and yeah, sure enough, there was no continuity through that. So I came up with a very simple, but not all that elegant repair. We'll take a look at that in a second. I already get the feeling this is going to be a bit difficult to see, but I'll try to point it out as best I can. So the upper section here is the antenna coils, and the lower section here is the oscillator coils. This one on the 10G chassis is your broadcast coil, and these are actually really nice. They have 2 terminals on top, 2 terminals on bottom, so you've got your primary winding down here, and you've got your secondary winding up here, as near as I can tell. And they seem to have a winding ratio of 2-to-1, so you get a decent little bit of gain there. But while I was doing this upper terminal, I went down and I ripped straight through one of the windings that was going to actually just wrap around the side. If we can get in close enough, we can see, maybe, I have attached each end of the damaged section to a resistor lead. Actually, I just clipped it off a random resistor that I didn't need, and I carefully soldered both ends, checked for continuity. We're talking like less than an ohm. But yeah, I got the continuity back, and I fired it up, and yeah, sure enough, got reception again. So that was lucky. I was really, really lucky. I've actually heard that some of the coils in these Grunows can go bad, although I think they were mostly talking about the discriminator coil in one of the IF cans. So that one, I guess, has a habit of going south. Don't know if it is in this set yet. I haven't messed with the automatic frequency control. I still have to do the alignment, and the discriminator is actually one of the last steps in properly setting this up, and I just got some microammeters to help me do that. So, but I'm going to wait and to do the alignment after I've cleaned up the cans and sorted out the wiring, which, take a look over here and show you what I mean. So, if we look at the top left corner here, this is one of our IF cans. Here's all our wiring. These used to be colored. Not so much anymore. The color is totally gone. I've noticed blue and green, that they should be red, black, blue, and green. And yeah, these are all rubber coated. The hole right here has no grommet or anything to protect it from shorts. And these are solid core wires. So what I'll probably just do is I'll take the can off, I'll unsolder it from the top, which is much easier, and then I'll slip some spaghetti tubing over these. I really don't want to go through the trouble trying to take them all out one at a time. I did that with my last project, and that was a hassle. It looks like it'll be even more so. There is one, however, right here. This guy, going over to the assembly that I probably should replace. It's got this bare section right in the middle that I don't like. And there's a few other of these rubber-coated wires. This one actually isn't even going to an IF can. It's okay. This one, however, is going to an IF can. It's in pretty bad shape. So, still got a few little things to fix. The other thing I am concerned about is the band switch assembly here. You notice all these screw holes. There's supposed to be a shield over it, actually. It was sort of a C-shaped assembly that went over each side and then covered it. I've seen pictures on eBay listings. I guess the last technician that came and fiddled with this just removed it and then didn't put it back. I really don't know if we're going to have trouble, like if the power supply over here, like the transformer, but the transformer is shielded, so I don't see how that could interfere with this. This whole thing is basically in a Faraday cage. Yeah, I don't know. Might wrap it in tinfoil or something to see if it improves reception, but for right now I'm going to leave it alone. It isn't hurting anything, as far as I know. But yeah, no, B+ and everything else is working great. And at this point, it's mostly just cosmetics. I actually have a replacement capacitor can clamp to go on top, but I haven't found any replacement capacitors to slip into them for looks, so I'm thinking I might use the wood dowel method. Just find one about 1 3/8 in diameter, paint it silver, maybe put some fake labels on it. And yeah, I'm not going to be selling this set, it's going to be in my personal collection. So I just make it look good enough for me, and then sometime in the future I can swap them out with real cans. But so far so good. And on a side note, I got the rest of the dial cleaned up, except for the spot down here, that's a little dirty. It looks a lot better. Not that I'll be using this part of the dial though, it's it's the worthless part, and not like there's much on shortwave in my area anymore, not even pirates. Oh well. Looks nice though. I got most of the gunk off the surface here, except for the stuff under here, which is impossible to get to unless I remove all of this, and I really don't feel like doing that. There's a lot of small parts. I'll clean in and around it, but at the end of the day, once this goes back in the cabinet, you're not going to see it. I am, however, going to remove these brass pulleys, put some white lithium grease on them, and I need to clean the knobs up a little bit, and there's divots in these two switches to indicate their position on the front of the cabinet, and then there are decals that match. And yeah, I did finally figure out the positions for this thing. So the tone control switch is also your automatic frequency control enable and disable. So going to the left is for standard broadcast. And at the far left you have, I want to say, it's your low pass, and then you've got more of a medium tone, and then you go here and that allows everything to pass. And then clicking in this one position over gets you low for AFC, medium, and then everything. I haven't really found any difference between the two, and plus I'm not really using these push buttons because there's nothing at these channel positions anymore, and with the chassis on this rickety table, it's a little hard to get a nice accurate point to stop it at. And plus I still don't understand how to actually set these stupid things. I haven't ever seen a set of instructions online. The Riders doesn't have any information, so yeah. I think for now I'm just gonna clean them up, put some clear plastic and some fake call letter stuff in there to make it look complete and leave it at that, because at the end of the day you're really only going to be using the tuning knob. The teledial is just a selling feature. It looks neat, but it's really not all that handy anymore. So I kind of lied when I said I was just gonna start sleeving the wiring on the intermediate frequency transformers. After looking at everything, I decided, well, A, I don't have enough spaghetti tubing to actually do it. I can't order anymore right now. Most of the supply places that sell it, being small businesses, are not able to sell anything or ship anything, which is unfortunate. But thanks to the magic that is Amazon, and because this is just solid core tinned wire, I went ahead went on Amazon, grabbed a box of this generic 22 gauge stuff. Plus I use this a lot for other projects, so it's handy. So I will go ahead and replace all the wiring on here, and I am going to be following the proper RMA color code conventions, like blue is plate, green is control grid, etc. Which reminds me, this wiring up here, I wasn't quite sure what color all of this should be. Well, thanks to the RMA code, now I know those are all supposed to be green. These guys here, by process of elimination, we already have red, black, and blue on here. Green is the only other color used on these. So these are supposed to be green because these are all control grid connections to the caps. Those are all going to be green, so easy. Yeah, so we'll replace this, and I have my nice new, got this from Antique Electronics Supply over in Tucson. Fantastic stuff. I got some yellow. I guess I'll have to find another use for that somewhere else. But I also pulled the IF cans and I put them in a rust removing bath. Some problems with that came up though. I grab one of them though. The outside of the cans, as it turns out, were not plated. They were painted silver just like the chassis. And of course the paint in a lot of places was already flaking off. Probably just due to age. So yeah, I'm going to wind up stripping all 3 of these because this one's in pretty bad shape, and just respraying them a dull silver finish to protect the outside. It is unfortunate I'm going to lose some of these markings, but realistically, yeah, that happens. So these will get repainted for proper protection. Some of the hardware I'll probably replace. Some of the star nuts and things are so badly corroded that they just turn completely black in the solution. Those I can get at any hardware store. Got McClendon's nearby anyway, so that's not a big deal. The only other thing that is worrying in all of this, I don't know if we can quite see it from here, this IF transformer, this is the second one, this screw right here is destroyed. After I pulled the can off, I noticed that someone had completely boogered the slot on it, and I don't know if I can get in close enough to really show how bad it currently is. Let's see here. Yeah, that's really not good. You can tighten it one direction, but it'll start slipping the other way, and I think my only real solution is going to be to use a file or a Dremel tool and cut a new slot across the other direction. Hoping that'll work. But yeah, that's the next thing. Oh, and there are 2 mica capacitors in this IF transfer. This is actually the discriminator adjustment. The 666 here is our triple duty diode. So we've got this one here that I'm going to replace, and this one here. Now they're probably not bad. The only reason I'm replacing them is because they're inside something that's not easily accessible. And in the future, if someone else was going to have to replace caps after I'm gone, it is kind of nice to not have to go in there and dig them out. I've got some new silver micas that I bought a while back just in case, so I'll go ahead and replace these just so that I know they're new. And yeah, then after all this wiring is done, it'll be time to give this thing an alignment. And I do finally have some microammeters to help do the discriminator portion, because you have to measure current as well as magnitude as well as direction. So it's not a super complicated alignment procedure, but it does require some tools that I did not have at the time, so that's going to be fun. So we're back to the underside of the chassis again. I've been doing yet more work to this that I just thought about. Let me show you here. We'll get to the cosmetic stuff in a minute, but the important things I would like to point out are, for one, all of the new IF transformer wiring. You can see this wonderful colored stuff here, all the brand new wire, as well as these guys here, which I have replaced with new wire. I really wish they gave me brown, but I don't have brown, so I use white instead of that. So all that's nice and new and replaced, no longer cracking or anything. And down here, I also did some replacements. This capacitor right here, this is a 1000 picofarad, was originally a mica mold. And I looked at the schematic, and I thought, you know, that's, for a mica mold, it's fairly close to a common film cap value. 102 is, I think, the smallest that you can usually get. You might be able to get smaller in film caps, but that's, in my collection, that happens to be right within the range. So I thought, you know, there's a good chance this might actually be paper instead of mica, so I figured I'd just swap that out. None of these other little guys here are anywhere near that big, I don't think. And all those circuits seem to be working pretty well, so. This is part of the automatic frequency control. This is actually connected to the lead for the control grid on the 6J7. So I just wanted to swap that out. And also, while I was checking in the area, I found this 100 kilo ohm resistor here was off by about 50%, so we're reading 150K. So that had to go. So this, yeah, hopefully this will help. Now I do want to show how the automatic frequency control works in the next video when I do the alignment. because I was playing with the set a few days ago and I actually got it to. I could tell when the AFC was working. It's actually kind of obvious. It's pretty cool actually, but I want to figure out a way to make more of a visual aid. So I'm going to hook up the microammeter that I have to the 6H6, the discriminator circuit, so that we can see the current flow when the intermediate frequency is on either side of resonance. That's when it should start changing around and stuff, and it should be kind of cool. Anyway, I think that's everything for... the other thing that I found out down here was on, if you look at the right side of the chassis where the power transformer is situated, I kept noticing that there was this extra brown wire on the very end of the terminal strip here all by itself. Didn't connect to anything, didn't seem important, and I thought, well, sometimes radios would have a transformer that might have either a lower or high voltage tap, maybe one that was for like a 100 volt residence, or maybe one that was closer to 120 to 130. A lot of late 20s radios would have a switch that would let you select between primary taps. The schematic, however, showed absolutely nothing. But while I was looking for alignment instructions, because the writers does not actually give the alignment instructions for the 10G chassis, they give them for the 1191, which uses the it's got one extra tube in the end. In the audio output circuit. The front end of it, the AFC and everything is identical to the 1091, so those instructions work just fine. But what was interesting was the instructions noted that the transformer had an additional brown wire right here that could be used instead of the one normally hooked up if you had a 120 or above volt resonance. Which is fabulous, because I was going to consider putting in like a dropping resistor or something, or maybe a bucking transformer. So I decided to check and see if this actually would work. So I plugged the set into the wall and checked the voltages at the tube sockets just to make sure. With it in the stock configuration, which is supposed to be run at about 115, 117 volts, I got like 6.8, 6.9 on the filaments, which is a little higher than I would like. They're supposed to be about 6.3, maybe a little above that. With this hooked up here, I'm actually getting more along the lines of 6.5, 6.6. It's a lot nicer, and I'm sure the B Plus will thank me, because that's the big thing, is that having really a much higher AC input voltage is going to cause the B Plus to rise significantly. The multiplier is much higher. So we keep the B Plus where it should be. I won't start frying capacitors, especially on fire up when the surge current is going. We don't want to exceed the voltage rating on these filter caps just by turning the power switch on every single time. So that's all well and good. I think that covers it for down here. Actually, I haven't had to do any other Oh, no, one last thing underneath the chassis here is the volume control. I was having trouble with you had to wiggle it a lot. I think I showed that in the last video. I showed that earlier. It seemed like it wasn't making good contact. If you wanted to get good audio, you had to press down or push up on the actual control to get it to work. And I figured, I tried squirting some deoxide in there to try and get it into the carbon track. That didn't seem to work at all. So I went ahead and I unsoldered a bunch of connections, pulled the control out of the front. I was able to leave the power switch wiring intact to it, and then I popped it open, which on most of these volume controls, it's just a phenolic wafer with a whole bunch of little metal tabs bent over it. You bend the tabs up with like a razor blade or something, and then pull the whole control out, and you can get to the carbon track. This one was a little more of a pain because the carbon track didn't actually stay behind. The switch section stayed behind in the housing, and the carbon track was actually attached to the rest of the shaft. There was a keeper on the top here that I couldn't remove, like an E-clip. So I cleaned it in place as best I could and reassembled it, and last I tested it, it seemed to get rid of that problem. It's much smoother going up and down the volume scale. You don't get any spots where it suddenly jumps in volume, and you don't have any problems with the audio quality requiring you to push down on the controller anymore, so that was good. So now I think we'll flip it over and we'll see what I've been doing on the top side, because things are a little prettier than they were last time. So, I suppose in order of the things that I've managed to actually get done on this, all of the control grid wiring has been replaced. Every single one of these tubes, the clips have been removed, cleaned. I've got this nice new green wire installed to all of them. I repainted the intermediate frequency transformer cans because they were in pretty bad shape. And I got some new star nuts on there to clean those up, so those all look, well, I think they look nice. So that's all. It's all very well cleaned up, and I do like the way this green wiring came out. And we also got the power transformer repainted in place. I wasn't about to start undoing all that wiring and yanking that thing out. It was just going to be too much of a hassle, so I gave it 2 coats of Rust-Oleum gloss. Probably should have been semi, but I had the can of gloss laying around from the last one I did, so yeah, I just used that. It'll be fine. No one really complains about it. I'm not selling this radio. The last thing, of course, I still need to do is get some of these in there. However, finding 1 3/8" wood dowels is actually not as easy as I thought it would be. They tend to max out at 1.5 inches, which is not going to fit. It does look like Home Depot might have 1 3/8" for clothes hanger rod material. So if I can get out to a hardware store, we don't really have a local Home Depot here. See if I can't find one. My local McClendon's does not have anything bigger than 1 1/4", sadly. I am, however, on the other clamp, these are riveted in place to the chassis. I'm going to drill this rivet and those 2 out, because these things are actually a bit on the nasty side. They've got some corrosion going on. The rivets are starting to rust as well, so probably dunk them in the rust remover, clean the areas around the base, and then I might spray paint them. I'd really rather not. They're supposed to be plated, but the plating's in pretty bad shape too, so I don't know. I may or may not. Might just leave them as is, clean them up, scrub them down, put them back in there, and then put the make up some fake capacitors. So that's all good there. And then we need to take a look at the front, because I did some work up here. Some things worked out the way I wanted them to, some things didn't, and I just wanted to give fair warning to anybody that has one of these sets. Alright, so last thing here before I go. When I was trying to clean up the controls on the front here, so the 2 little pulleys, this guy here and its friend over there, as well as the tuning control pulley here. I pulled all of these, got them cleaned up, put lithium grease on there so that these spin nice and clean, which they do now. And then I decided to do the same thing to the tuning one. Unfortunately, I did not look and see how this was strung. It's simple. It's just got 1 or 2 loops around the giant dial band at the back, and then the goes through a pair of holes, goes in here, and then it wraps around and connects to either end of a coil spring. Pretty typical stuff. The problem is this coil spring is completely ruined. The last person that used this utterly destroyed it. You can see there's just this piece of wire holding it in place now, which is kind of terrible because I don't know how much tension was supposed to be on here originally, and you can see that this channel right here is where our spring was supposed to be in the first place. And as the spring is right now, it's actually half as long as it used to be because I actually cut out the other half. Because when I removed this knob, I allowed it to go slack. And then when I tried to put tension on it again, it shifted position and I lost all my tension and I could not get this to spin. In fact, as it is, if I go all the way around to the other side, I can't actually get this to close or open 100%. Not that it matters, there's nothing at the end of the band, but it's annoying that I don't have the correct amount of tension. So at some point I'm going to have to find a spring that's close to this that has, because usually with these springs they're not very strong. The ones you find in most hardware stores don't have a lot of tension. So it works like it is right now, but I'd really rather not leave it like this hodgepodge mess right here. It's supposed to be in here and it just bothers me. So just for warning, if you do decide to remove this control, this spring, it should stay put if it's in this channel here. But someone may have goofed with it. I haven't seen another radio. I'm used to having like one of these ends is hooked to one spring which clips onto somewhere, and then the other end's hooked to another separate spring clipped onto somewhere so that they stay put. With this system, the spring is able to wobble either direction, which is kind of annoying, actually. Either way, it's just something that occurred to me. The other thing is, in the cosmetics department, I did try to repaint these push buttons here, except that the paint that I had was really, really old, and it came out bad. In fact, the brush I was using a bit too big, and I actually wound up getting more on the inside edge than I really wanted to, so I'm going to have to start over on those. I bought myself I ordered some fresh Testors model paint, because the paint that I have, I think, is going on 30 years old. I found it in the garage. It was white, so, figured I'd give it a shot. And, yeah, it was chunkier than month-old milk, so that was a stupid idea, but it did stick in there pretty good, so I'll clean that out with lacquer thinner. The rest of this paint seems to come out okay with lacquer thinner. The trick is, because these are plastic, getting the paint to actually adhere is a little tricky, so I have to put down a thin first coat and then go back over it and then start and wait for it to dry. But I think what I did find is that once this is illuminated, this white paint really does light up a lot better. And I think once I take out all these call letters and everything, get everything in there painted nice and even again, it really should shine pretty well. I did also do a little bit of research on these call letters. These are mostly Oregon stations. They're all defunct, unfortunately, but these are all in their correct positions, and the dial is within about 10 kilohertz on each one. I think the only one that has anything still nearby, was it KOCA? Some of these call letters are actually no longer being used. They've changed like 4 or 5 times. So one of these is still, there's still something in that area, which is kind of neat. I'll have to add some additionals, because we have Como in the area at 1000, which is annoying because my AM broadcaster only works on the upper half of the band from 900 to 1500 kilocycles. So I have to fight with all of the high power stations in the area. But that's more of a final thing. The alignment is the next big project. Get the alignment done, and then I can worry about the last few cosmetic details and getting it put back in the cabinet. And then eventually, when the weather warms up, I'll add this cabinet to the list of ones I need to do. I have a Stromberg Carlson that is all stripped and ready to go that I need to work on. And I also have some other projects that I'm going to start doing electrical work on here, get those on the channel. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one where we're going to try and get this thing tuned up properly.